561. Rose's gaze was firmly locked onto Julian's neck. More specifically, it was locked onto the visible handprint on his neck, and for a brief moment, she fell into a daze, her mind wandering away from the present. She was reminded of what had happened a long time ago. It was a distant past, one that she had long forgotten about, but staring at that handprint that reminded her so much of her own, she felt her chest quiver. She wouldn't have cared so much had it just been the handprint, but feeling the familiar mana trace that the handprint gave off left her completely unsettled. No, but it's not possible. Back then, following her actions, she had felt like she had killed the one who had infiltrated the place. She remembered burning their entire body to a crisp. The seed of dawn was also present. Given that he didn't say anything else back then, she thought she had killed him. And yet, all of a sudden, startling her out of her thoughts was Julian as he suddenly took a step back. "Hey, what is wrong with you?" Kira's voice suddenly echoed, startling Rose out of her thoughts. Taking a closer look at Julian, she saw his face turning pale. Rose frowned. Is this some sort of act? What is he doing? Rose didn't buy whatever he was doing at first, but that quickly changed when his knee suddenly buckled. Thump. Covering his mouth, Julian's face turned even paler as his expression started to twist. Julian. There was something unsettling about what was happening to Julian. Before Rose or Kira could make sense of it, his entire demeanor began to shift. His body started to convulse all of a sudden as he brought his hands towards his neck, seemingly trying to choke himself. What? His sudden action startled the two of them, with Kira looking the more startled. On the other hand, Rose's eyes squinted as she took a step back. Spit started to flow out of Julian's mouth all of a sudden, and just when things started to intensify, it all stopped. Quote. A strange silence filled the room shortly after. As the two pairs of crimson eyes locked onto Julian, his arms fell limply. Julian. Kira was the first to call out for him as she moved closer to him, her brows furrowed and her face filled with unease. She was just about to take a step towards him when Rose stopped her. What are you doing? Kira's face twisted at the sight of her aunt. Used to such gaze, Rose was completely unaffected. Right now, something about Julian felt off. While she still didn't take him for a threat, she still remained cautious. Wait, but just as she focused her attention on him, Kira managed to slip past her and move towards where Julian was. Shit, Rose was quick to react as she tried to pull Kira back, but by then, it was already too late. Kira arrived before Julian, and just as she was about to reach him, Julian's head flicked up, his arm shooting towards her neck and firmly grasping it. Rose's eyes hardened at the sight. But just as she prepared to act, she heard Kira's pained groan, freezing her in place for a moment. What are you doing? Her words were met with a strange silence. With his gaze firmly placed on Kira, and then shifting towards Rose, Julian's hazel eyes flickered with a certain coldness that felt almost chilling. As the tension reached a standstill, his lips slowly parted, his voice coming out hoarse. Quote. Who are you? A grand white palace stretched before my vision. It was a palace I had grown accustomed to, and it was also the same place where the mirror was supposedly stored. Do you think you've made the right decision? Pebble suddenly asked, staring at me from the side. I shrugged my shoulders. Quote. I don't know. As of right now, I was no longer in control of my body. I had completely given up control of it. It was a bit of a gamble from my side, but seeing the way she was looking at me, I felt like this was the best way for me to disrupt her thoughts. At the very least, it'll make her more confused. Whether it worked or not was up to the future to decide, but as of right now, I had more pressing matters to tend to. Entering the palace, I made my way towards the back room where I had previously stored the mirror and entered. Clank. A familiar sight greeted me the moment I entered the room, and my face lit up the moment I caught the sight of the mirror. As expected, my feeling wasn't wrong. I had felt the presence of the mirror the moment I came back from the past. However, I wasn't entirely sure. However, things were different now. Seeing it right before my very eyes, I knew that I was right. I really managed to bring it back with me. Alongside the appearance of the mirror, I was also finally able to clear up a few of the things that I was confused about. In the end, the reason why the mirror ended up missing with no one able to find it was because the future me had taken it. Future. Or was it present? I ruffled my head. Quote. Talk about some weird twist. Whatever the case was, now that the mirror was here, it was time for me to figure out how to use it. Releasing the seal and allowing Julian to take over was a risk in itself. Thankfully, it looks like my worries are unfounded. I reached out to grasp the mirror, the coolness of the metal handle reaching the tips of my fingers. Just as I pulled the mirror to stare at my reflection, I paused. Shifting my attention away from the mirror, my eyes drifted toward a certain diary, and I felt my face subtly change. Right, I almost forgot there was that. I had almost completely forgotten about it, but indeed, I did recall putting it in the ring alongside the mirror. I paused for a moment, alternating my gaze between the mirror and the diary. After a little bit of thought, I brought my attention away from the diary. I could always find time to check the diary later. The mirror was more important. How does this work? I stared straight into my reflection. A pair of familiar hazel eyes stared back at me. I tightened my grip on the mirror, channeling mana into it. At first, it remained still, unresponsive. But as I fed it more and more mana, I began to see subtle shifts, small, almost imperceptible changes that grew more noticeable with each surge of mana. My reflection started to ripple and the mana started to drain even further. The rate at which my mana was being sucked was quite alarming. To the point where I started to question whether Julian was doing all right. The mana was coming directly from the main body after all. He definitely isn't having a good time. But who was I to care? The worse he was, the better things were for me. Swoosh. Changes continued to occur within the mirror. More ripples formed and the reflection started to distort, changing into something else. The more things progressed, the more surprised and shocked I became. That was because I noticed the figure within the mirror change into something else entirely. Wait. Staring at the visage that I hadn't seen in a very long time, I felt my heart press tightly against my chest as my lips suddenly grew parched. What is it? I could hear Pebble's curious voice from the side as it hopped over my shoulder to stare at my reflection. Its head tilted in confusion. Is that you? I didn't answer. Instead, I kept my gaze focused on the mirror. No, it was more like I couldn't tear my gaze away from it. From the emerald green eyes to the familiar black hair and well-defined jaw, I recognized the reflection almost instantly. My breath caught in my throat as I swallowed quietly. This was without a doubt me. Or more precisely, the past me. Staring at the visage I hadn't seen in so long, I couldn't tear my eyes away from the reflection. It had been so long that I had almost forgotten what I looked like, and seeing myself again brought a rush of emotions I couldn't quite put into words. Yes, I wasn't anywhere near as handsome as I currently was, but I wasn't ugly at all. In fact, I was on the better-looking side. More importantly, I didn't look sick. In the final year of my life, my hair had begun to thin, and my weight had steadily dropped. Seeing myself like this, it feels weird. I wasn't used to seeing such sight and my grip of the mirror uncowingly tightened. Taking a deep breath to steady myself, I stared back at the reflection, my mind racing. Is this what the mirror does? Does it show how my soul really looks? Does it reflect the true face of someone, beyond what one can see at face value? If it's really the case, then I can see a bunch of clerics fight over this thing. It was a practical cheat code for them. No disguise would ever work in front of the mirror. I could see why those from the inverted sky were so desperate for the mirror. But of course, I understood that there was more to the mirror than just this. As far as I know, it can help me completely seal Julian's soul away. This was the other property that I knew of. But I was certain things didn't stop there. Surely there was more to it. I was almost certain of it. But what exactly? Stopping mid-sentence, my head flicked directly towards the mirror as I noticed a subtle change once again. Unlike last time, there were no ripples or any changes of the sort. No, the changes seemed to be coming directly from my reflection. What? I focused intently on my old visage, trying to make sense of what was happening. It was only when I zeroed in on it that I saw the shift. The reflection's head moved. I almost ended up dropping the mirror in shock. I barely managed to stop myself from reacting, and when I refocused on the mirror, I saw my old face blink. As if on cue, the background behind it began to shift, transforming into a place I recognized all too well. My home. Before I could make sense of what was happening, my reflection opened its mouth, and an all too familiar voice echoed in the air. I'm sure you have a lot of questions. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. What in the world was happening? 562. Don't bother asking any questions. This is merely a recording. Just like that, I managed to recompose myself. For a moment, I almost thought I was directly talking to my past self, but it didn't seem to be the case. Since you managed to see this recording, it must mean you've gotten your hands on the astral mirror. That's good. He appeared pleased by the development. Or at least, it looked like it. Although it was my face, I couldn't read my own expression at all. Was I really like this in the past? A lot of things may not make sense right now, but they'll do eventually. Just know one thing. The visage in the mirror paused and stared right at me. Quote. We're not the good guys. I seek no virtue. I only seek power. I am filled with sins, but my conscience is clear. I am, simply doing what I am meant to do. Whether we're good or bad, that's irrelevant. What is this even supposed to mean? I took a moment to try and digest the words as my lips pressed tightly. All I know is that I see too much. Past, present, future. I see it all, and this power, it's consuming me. A sudden change occurred to the visage within the mirror. Gradually, his eyes started to turn bloodshot as my visage started to sunken. This power, it's not something that we're supposed to be able to control. It's overwhelming and exhausting, and it's slowly destroying me. The more I witness, the more I comprehend, and with each realization, I realize just how little time I have left. By now, I could see the face behind the mirror change into a very familiar one. I'm dying. His voice was hoarse. I tried to pay close attention to his words, but couldn't. Something about his current state drew my mind out of any thought. I don't want to die. Something pressed against my chest. But I must die. Quote. A tense silence followed shortly after. Staring at my old visage and seeing my expression finally show signs of cracking, I could tell. I could see the despair and fear within my eyes. I'm not scared of death, but I'm scared of losing myself. To live in defeat means to die 1,000 times over. A man's fate is not forged by fate or those who will their path, it is taken with his own hands. That's why even though I see, I act. Even though it kills me, I act. He stopped, his face trembling slightly. Gradually, however, he shook his head and raised his head again to look at me. That's why even though I can't see you, I know you will act. He sounded relieved, yet I could still sense the exhaustion that lingered beneath my words. In a way, he sort of reminded me of Kira's mom. She too looked like this. So this is why I felt her expression so familiar. It was because she reminded me of how I once was. Closing his eyes, my visage took a deep breath before staring back at me. The extractor of containment, astral mirror, oracle's eyes, and the chalice of collection. I need you to collect all 4 of the relics I left behind. I left behind. To ensure things unfold as they should, you must gather them. I know you currently hold 2, the extractor and the mirror. But that's not enough. I need you to collect all 4 of them. Once you do, everything, and I mean everything, will become clear to you. Why I did what I did, and where Noelle is. My breath stopped at the mention of Noelle. Ding! It was also then that a notification flashed across my vision, stunning me on the spot. Filled Diamond main quest activated. Collect all 4 relics. Character progression plus filled diamond filled diamond filled diamond. Game progression plus filled diamond filled diamond filled diamond. Failure. Calamity 1 plus filled diamond filled diamond filled diamond. Calamity 2 plus filled diamond filled diamond filled diamond. Calamity 3 plus filled diamond filled diamond filled diamond. Wait. I rubbed my eyes to make sure I wasn't seeing things. Single quote. Why can't I still see the numbers? Seeing the new quest and the obscured numbers alongside it, I didn't know how to react. What sort of situation was this? This was the first time something like this had occurred, and I was genuinely confused. But more than anything, my thoughts were somewhere else. Noelle, where is he? How was he doing? He was still alive, right? As if sensing my thoughts, a sad smile crossed the visage within the mirror. If you think our life sucks, just know that it's nothing compared to what he's experiencing. There's nothing more haunting than being used as a tool for the survival of humanity. A surge of genuine hatred washed over my visage in an instant, causing his already bloodshot eyes to redden further as his face contorted. That's why we have to do it. That was the moment that I saw it. We have to kill them all. Madness. All the gods. We have to kill them. True madness. And seeing the state that I was in, I found myself biting my lips tightly. This was especially after realizing that this madness came from the power that I wielded. I suddenly had a thought. Am I going to turn mad after I completely inherit all my memories and powers? No, in the first place, was the reason for my death cancer or? I'm sure you're confused about everything, and the bits and pieces that I've told you. It's frustrating, isn't it? Knowing that I could be telling you everything right now, but amn't. My visage smirked. As I said, collect all 4 artifacts, and the answers will reveal themselves. If I were to explain everything now, it would take days, and neither of us has that kind of time, nor do you need to know everything. It won't change how powerless you currently are. It's better if you see everything for yourself. Only then will you truly understand. I opened my mouth, almost reflexively forgetting that this was a recording, and just as I was about to speak, I stopped. In the end, the only thing I could do was stare at my old visage as it stared back at me. By now, he looked different than before. His face was sunken, and his hair had all fallen. He looked just like I did before coming to this world. The entire time, he didn't say anything and just let me see his state. This continued for the next several seconds before his image faded and my own reflection appeared. But even then, I couldn't tear my gaze away from the mirror. I couldn't. How could I, after everything that I had just heard? Human. Suddenly recalling that I wasn't the only one present, I turned to look at Pebble, who was resting over my shoulder. I opened my mouth once more, my mind gearing in all sorts of ways as I thought of a way to explain what had happened to Pebble when. Why does it show my true appearance in the mirror? It was then that realization suddenly dawned on me as I looked in the mirror. Licking my lips, I carefully asked, "Is that all you see?" Pebble looked at me with confusion. Was I supposed to see something else? Do you not see me? I do. Then, I'm already aware that this isn't your true body, human. I am not very surprised by your change in appearance. That's not it. Did you? Never mind. It didn't matter to me whether Pebble saw it or not. Either way, Pebble already knew my secret, just like Almighty did. Even if Pebble had overheard the conversation I had with the mirror, it wouldn't have made much of a difference, given all that it already knew. And more than anything, there were more pressing matters that I needed to focus on. Like, collecting the 4 artifacts. I was still unsure of their importance and what they did exactly, but given the information I had received, collecting them was a must. There was just one problem. How exactly do I get the chalice from Leon? Indeed, Leon was the one in possession of the 3rd artifact, the chalice of collection. What made things worse was the fact that I was the one to have given him the chalice. Now that I needed it, finding a way to take it from him felt a little problematic. How exactly was I going to do that? And what about the Oricleus Eye? Where was that? I suddenly sighed in annoyance. Things had just gotten more troublesome, but at the very least, I now had a more concrete goal to work towards. But I wonder exactly what I'll find out once I collect all 4 artifacts. In fact, were answers the only thing I was going to find? There had to be more to the artifacts than what I was being told. After all, if Cithras coveted them so much, there had to be something beyond what I knew, something they weren't letting me in on. But whatever, I was going to find one way or another. Putting that aside, how exactly do I use this thing? Holding onto the mirror, I poured more mana into it. I could feel changes happening to my body outside, but given that I was now stuck in the ring, I couldn't exactly tell what was happening. The only thing I knew was that Julian was probably having a tough time outside. I've already poured so much mana into this thing, and yet, the only thing I've gotten so far is a video message. How exactly do I? My thoughts came to an abrupt halt as a sudden shift occurred. The mirror began to glow with a blinding white light. Startled by the sudden situation, I almost let go of the mirror, but just managed to keep it from falling as my eyes were blinded from the light. It took a good couple of seconds for my sight to recover, and when I did, my eyes immediately fell on the mirror as a visible change occurred. Staring at the mirror, my jaw opened into an O shape as I found the words slip away from me. It was only after a few seconds that I finally closed my mouth as my lips gently pulled up. Forget about just sealing Julian. This thing might be a lot more useful than I expected. I slowly turned my head to look at Pebble, who seemed to have had a sudden epiphany. Human, I know. I slowly nodded, looking back towards the mirror. You might be able to get a body sooner than expected. 563. With what I've recently received as compensation, coupled with this mirror, I don't think it's impossible to have you recover your body. There were no instructions on how to use the mirror. However, just by staring at the mirror, I could tell that it was capable of containing souls. In that sense, then, what if it can contain Pebble's soul? Then wouldn't it be possible for me to transfer Pebble's soul into his new body? The more I thought about it, the more plausible this scenario seemed to be. Helping Pebble get a body was a good thing for me. Just like what happened with Almighty, the same could happen with Step of Suppression, it might upgrade. Of course, as of right now, the skill left much to be desired, and that was mainly because I wasn't utilizing it properly. Unfortunately, I was too focused on other things and neglected to master it. I knew this because Pebble always reminded me of how awful my control over the skill was. Human, do you think it's possible? Shifting my attention to Pebble, who stared at the mirror with an unusual glint, I pursed my lips before hesitantly nodding my head. I can't say for certain, but I think it should be possible. I'll look into it more later, but right now, there are other things that I need to take care of. Like, taking back control of my body and finally getting rid of the hidden danger that was Julian. I took a deep breath and stared at the mirror in front of me. Now then, how exactly do I do that? Who are you? Julian found his voice coming out hoarse. Staring at the two unfamiliar pairs of crimson eyes, he found his expression warping. He didn't know what was happening. But if there was one thing he was sure about, it was the fact that he had control over his body back. But was he happy about the situation? He wasn't. What is that bastard planning? Julian did consider the possibility that something had gone wrong with the parasite, leading to this situation, but after everything that had happened, he no longer believed in such coincidences. Julian's hand turned purple as he held onto the strange girl's neck. Whatever the case was, he made sure to fully incapacitate the girl in his grasp. From his observation, she seemed close to the parasite. Not only that, but seeing the other woman, who appeared more threatening, hesitate, Julian realized that as long as he kept her hostage, she wouldn't dare make a move against him. What followed after was a short period of silence as the two stared at each other. So, Julian spoke one more while licking his parched lips. If there was one thing he currently understood, it was that he was outmatched. The woman in front of him gave off a suffocating presence, and if she wanted to, she'd be able to kill him in an instant. His only saving grace was the girl in his hand. Are you not going to answer me? The woman kept staring at him in silence, her eyes narrowed. Just as the tension in the air became unbearable, making him feel as though he were drowning, she finally spoke. Is this some sort of act? Did I catch on to something? Is that why you're acting like this? Could it be that it was really you? What? Julian frowned, unable to fully understand her words, but soon enough, something clicked in his mind. I see what's going on here. He remembered something similar happening in the past. That parasite, he's using me as some sort of excuse to bail himself out of whatever situation he's in. Julian gritted his teeth, his chest tightening under the pressure of his anger. If it had been his former self, he would have fallen for the trap, but things had changed. Julian could see through the parasite's scheme now, and he intended to reveal the truth, hoping to win her over to his side. Like the saying went, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. This is my only hope. Julian's lips parted as he prepared to speak when, all of a sudden, he felt a weird tickling sensation rise up from deep within his chest. At first, he was confused. The sensation, it wasn't anything big, but it was also hard to ignore. This became especially hard to ignore when Julian was very wary of any little thing. As a result, his thoughts immediately jumped towards the parasite. Could it be, quote. Suddenly, the tickling sensation shifted. It grew more prickly, spreading down every inch of his body. Julian's eyes widened. What is? Julian grew alarmed. He could feel the sensation growing stronger and stronger with every second, and his grip on the girl loosened slightly. No, this bastard. Julian's face flushed with rage as he hastily looked in the direction of the crimson-eyed woman. Help me. I'm not him. As time passed, the sensation grew more unbearable. It became increasingly difficult for him to speak as his chest tightened, growing heavier with each passing moment. It felt as though something was siphoning the energy from his body, leaving him utterly drained and lifeless. It was also then that Julian understood what was happening. Something is draining my mana. Help. He kept begging the crimson-eyed woman, but all he got in response was a cold and detached stare from her. Julian's eyes turned bloodshot at the sight. Why, you bitch. Curses started to flow out of his mouth. Thump. Unknowingly, his grip on the girl loosened, and she collapsed beside him. Unfortunately, Julian could hardly think about her as the mana in his body started to get depleted more and more. Where? Julian's teeth clenched tightly as saliva flew out of his mouth. In a moment of desperation, his eyes locked onto the ring on his finger, and soon, the realization hit him. Could it be? Julian stumbled to his knees as his eyes continued to remain fixed onto the black ring on his finger. The more he looked at the ring, the more certain he was. The ring, it's draining my mana. And yet, he felt hesitant to touch it. He recalled what had happened to him in the past when he interacted with the ring, and recalling that moment, he felt hesitant. What would happen if he were to touch the ring? Would his consciousness be brought into that strange white world again? And no, damn it, Julian's face flushed at the thought. Anything but that. Still, his options were limited. His mana was being steadily drained, and he needed it to stop. Gritting his teeth, he reached for the ring on his finger, determined to pry it off. Arg! The moment his fingers brushed the ring, a strange cooling sensation washed over him. Julian ignored it, focusing on trying to remove the ring. However, as he tugged at it, the ring refused to budge, no matter how hard he pulled. No, how? Julian tried a couple more times, but it still refused to move at all. Panic started to set in as he felt his mana pool start to dry up completely. The situation felt completely hopeless, and as he tried to pull the ring once more, he realized that he didn't have any strength left in his body to do so. Ah, thump, he fell on his back right after. The world around him started to spin, and his vision grew blurry. As he lay on the floor, his body convulsing uncontrollably, he could see the ceiling above him. Ah, fuck, Julian was overcome with a sense of despair. Why was this happening to him? All he wanted was to have his own body back. This was his body, nobody else's. He didn't want to go back to the endless world of darkness that had confined him over the past year or so. He'd rather die than go back to that. Huick, Julian clutched his chest. He felt frustrated by the situation. He didn't ask for any of this, and yet, you're frustrated, aren't you? A voice suddenly whispered into Julian's head. Startled, Julian found himself standing in front of a white world. Within the white world, he saw a tall and gigantic palace. And standing before the palace was a figure identical to him, holding a silver mirror. By his shoulder sat a black cat, gazing in his direction with a curious expression. Julian's eyes burned with rage as he lunged at him, but just as he moved, the parasite flicked his hand. In an instant, Julian's body grew unbearably heavy, forcing him to his knees. What? I'm sorry about that. Taking a few steps forward, the parasite stood before Julian, his eyes looking down on Julian, who raised his head to look back at him. In that moment, as he locked eyes with the parasite, all of Julian's struggle faded away. He had only ever seen such eyes from his father in the past. Those cold and detached eyes. Right there, he understood that whatever he said, the parasite wouldn't care at all. I know this isn't truly my body, it's yours. I also understand how much you've suffered over the years, and I won't stand here telling you that you deserve this, even after everything you've been through in the past. But, the parasite said, his voice seemingly emotionless. I need this body, I really do. No, what, that? Julian suddenly started to have a terrible feeling as he looked up to see the parasite looking directly at the mirror in his hands. In order to accomplish my goal, I need this body, and your constant attempts at trying to get it back have been hindering my plans. That's why I have to do this. Julian closed his eyes and shifted his attention to his arm. He felt tempted for a moment to use the second leaf on Julian. To see his past and what made him the way he was, but he knew this wasn't the time yet. He knew he'd have time for it later. Therefore, I'll make this quick. Suddenly, the mirror was held up and flipped over. Julian's face changed drastically as he tried to look away, but before he could turn his head, a pair of paws pressed against his face, forcing him to face the mirror. There, he caught a glimpse of his own reflection. The moment Julian caught a glimpse of his reflection, a brilliant glow erupted from the mirror. Before he could react, he felt his face being pulled toward it, as if the mirror were sucking him in. No, Julian's struggle merely lasted a second before his figure completely faded, leaving nothing behind. The world grew quiet shortly after his disappearances. Julian closed his eyes and let out a long breath. He didn't feel any particular way doing this. For his goal and for his future, he had to do this. He felt no pity or sadness. Just a little bit of sympathy. Opening his eyes again, Julian put the mirror away and looked up. Goodbye. For good, I hope. 564. The moment I opened my eyes, I found myself lying on the ground, completely paralyzed. My mana was depleted, and I could feel multiple restraints all over my body, holding me in place and making any movement impossible. Single quote. Ah, shit. Opposite me was a pair of crimson eyes, staring coldly at me. I felt my left brow twitch. Yeah, I saw this coming from miles away. This entire scenario was the same exact scenario that I expected to occur after regaining control over my body. While the circumstances were indeed bad for me, I wasn't necessarily too concerned. I didn't think Rose had it in her to kill me or Kira. She was not what she appeared to be on the outside. You can release me now. I'm good. When I opened my mouth to speak, my voice came out rather hoarse. This was to be expected, considering what my body had just gone through. Alongside my voice, my entire body was also suffering. I could feel faint convulsions in my feet and arms, with small pulses of pain flickering in and out of my mind. They weren't unbearable, just bothersome. But the most burdensome thing right now wasn't the pain. No, it was her gaze. Quote. Staring at me in silence, Rose's eyes were squinted. I couldn't tell what she was thinking at all. Was she still thinking about what had happened before? Was I able to get rid of her suspicions? Or, the silence felt suffocating, and just as I found it to be unbearable, her mouth finally parted open. Is that why you're looking for the mirror? It took an instant to understand her words, and the moment I did, I furrowed my brows and didn't answer immediately. It was only after a few seconds had passed that I finally nodded my head. Quote. Yes. At the same time, I glanced over at Kira, who was lying next to me. She looked unusually pale, and although she wasn't bound like I was, she certainly didn't seem to be in the best condition. What exactly happened to her? Seeing how she's glaring at me, perhaps Julian did something to her. Yeah, who was I kidding? That was probably what happened. I've had trouble controlling it, that's why I asked Kira to help me. She refused, though. She did. Rose's gaze shifted towards Kira, who tilted her head and glared back at her. Like I said, I have no fucking clue as to where it is. How many times have I fucking told you? I wouldn't have believed her in the past, but now I do. After all, I had the mirror. Quote. Rose's eyes squinted as though she didn't fully believe her niece. Kira shot her an even harsher glare, and for the next few seconds, the two of them stood face to face, locked in a silent stare down, like an aunt and niece caught in some sort of showdown. I took that time to look around me and find some sort of way to get out of my current situation. There were several ideas that came to my mind, but before I even had the time to properly act on them, Rose's head suddenly flicked to face the window of the room. Her expression changed subtly before shifting in my direction. All of a sudden, a suffocating pressure burst out of her body. Was it you? Quote. What? Startled, I tried to look in the direction of where she was looking but found my neck locked into place. What is happening? Kira also looked surprised as she looked back, but she didn't seem to spot anything, and her head tilted in confusion. I don't see anything. What sort of? Eek. Damn it. Cursing under her breath, Rose's figure blurred and disappeared from my sight. Before I could make sense of what was happening, I heard Kira yelp beside me and then felt something press against my waist, lifting me off the ground. Quote. Ah, powerless, I could only watch the ground distance itself from me. By the time I grasped what was happening, a deafening crash echoed through the air, and the sound of shattering glass filled the room. Crash. My hair started to flutter as my vision shifted, and we appeared outside of the window, falling toward the ground. That was when I truly understood what was happening. I'm being kidnapped. Great. Kya. That was Kira, not me. A few moments prior, in Aoife's room. How far are they? They should be here anytime soon. That's faster than expected, Evelyn said, looking at the time. It had only been about 15 minutes since Aoife had called for help from the Empire. She had originally said it would take an hour, but surprisingly, they arrived a lot earlier than that. Aoife also looked pleasantly surprised, but upon further thought, this was to be expected. The royal family had forces stationed in every major household. They claimed it was for assistance whenever needed, but the reality was far different. It really was more there to keep most of the households in check. Although they claimed to stay out of disputes between the households, if any conflict put the royal family at a disadvantage, they would quietly step in and intervene behind the scenes. The forces that were coming were such forces. I've called Leon and the others to come. I'll fill them in on the situation. I think they also noticed something wrong with Kira. Yes, that's a good idea. Right on cue, someone knocked on the door. To talk. It was Leon and the others. What happened? Taking a look around the room, Leon frowned while looking at them. Seeing how Aoife said it was urgent, he didn't really have a good feeling about the situation. He would have normally been more prepared, but lately, ever since that incident, his mind had felt like it had been in a deep fog. Everything he thought felt heavy, and he found it hard to think properly. He tried his best not to show it externally, but Julian was able to catch on pretty quickly. It couldn't be helped. Leon needed some time to properly adjust to the situation. After all, where is Julian? Looking around, Leon suddenly noticed that Julian wasn't present. Looking behind him, Keys, Amael, and Kalian were with him. On the other hand, the only two people who were missing were Kira and Julian. Leon's eyes closed. I should have seen this coming. After all, Julian is here. He knew at that moment that his worries weren't unfounded. I understand where you're coming from, Leon, but I don't think Julian has anything to do with it this time. Also realizing that Julian wasn't present, Aoife's lip twitched, but she pretended to toss her worry to the side and quickly informed the three of them about what she did and how she felt that something was amiss with Kira. So you're saying that you used your family power because you felt that something was odd with Kira? Aoife's eyes guiltily swam around the room before she scratched the side of her cheek. Well, yes. Julian is here so. But didn't you say Julian has nothing to do with it this time? Yes, but you did good. Not expecting such words from Leon, Aoife blinked her eyes. She then saw Leon looking at her like a proud parent who saw his child grow. If there's one thing I've learned over the past year, it's that if something seems off, it's probably because it is. I've seen too much go down this year. You did well calling them in early. There was nothing with being safer than sorry. What was the worst that could happen even if they were wrong? It's not like Aoife will get kicked out from the royal family for using her own forces. Him and Evelyn were probably the only ones that felt this way. Looking back, Leon could see the confused looks on Keys and the others. Even Amael was looking at him strangely, mumbling something along the lines of, "Isn't that a waste of resources?" Amel's naivete made him shake his head. He should have already understood how things worked around here, yet he still couldn't grasp the reason behind Aoife's actions. The same went for the other two, but in hindsight, they likely hadn't witnessed just how bad things had gotten in the past. He couldn't fault them for that. Oh, it looks like they're almost here. Raising her head and looking away from her communication device, Aoife's face lit up. She was about to say a few more words when, all of a sudden, the sound of glass shattering echoed from above. Crash. As if in sync, all heads flicked in the direction of the window where a figure vaulted down. Given everyone's considerable strength, they watched in slow motion as a figure leapt down from the floor above, clutching what seemed to be two other figures on each shoulder. In that brief moment, Leon's gaze met a pair of hazel eyes that seemed hollow, as if tired of everything. Single quote. So that's where you were. The two locked eyes for the briefest of moments before finally disappearing from view. Kya, a muffled scream echoed shortly after. Quote. 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 The room turned silent shortly after that as Aoife's mouth remained open, unable to utter a single word. Neither could Evelyn and the others as they blinked their eyes, unable to fully grasp what had happened. The only one who was able to remain calm was Leon, who closed his eyes and sighed. I need a raise. Opening his eyes again, he looked at the others who were still stunned and made his way towards the door. Oh, right. Before leaving, he turned back. Quote. Julian was the one who screamed. He just felt like he had to let everyone know. Clank. It was only then that the others snapped out of it as Aoife hastily looked at her communication device and frantically shouted orders. On the other hand, Keys looked at Kalian, who looked back at him. Was it really Julian who screamed? Kalian thought about it for a moment. He did catch on to Julian's figure for a brief moment, Keys probably did, too. His eyes looked dead more than anything. No, more importantly, did someone just kidnap him? 565. Swoosh. On the outskirts of the Milna estate was a dense forest. The forest was narrow, with a wide road cutting through its center, leading to one of the major cities under Milna's jurisdiction. Knowing this, Rose headed in the opposite direction. It was just that. This is really uncomfortable, Hanging over her shoulder like a sack of potatoes, I watched as several branches brushed past my face, forcing me to squint my eyes momentarily. For whatever reason, I got kidnapped alongside Kira. Most likely, she noticed something strange and made a dip for it. I didn't know what prompted her to run like that, but I wasn't in a situation to think too much. Heck, Kira wasn't having a good time either. Neither of us was. Shut up, or I'll seal your mouth. Well, at least Kira was rather loud about her discomfort. It was a pity that both of our bodies were in a state where we couldn't move at all. The only things we could move were our mouths. Ah, shit, let me go. And Kira took full advantage of that. Help, shut up. A simple tap on Kira's neck was all it took to silence her. For a brief moment, I almost felt grateful for her. Kira's screams were far from pleasant. Even I struggled to tolerate them. Thankfully, Rose silenced her quickly, but as I watched her sprint off to who knew where, it was clear she hadn't thought this through. No, maybe she does know where she's going, but I don't think she ever planned on bringing me with her. It was then that a thought crossed my mind. Wait, don't tell me she's planning on bringing us back to the inverted sky. The thought almost made me jump up with fright. Suddenly coming to a stop, Rose looked around, her eyes squinted. It should be somewhere here. Where did he leave it? She frantically scanned her surroundings while checking her communication device. I stared at whatever she was doing with squinted eyes, feeling my heart sink. The more I overheard her speak, the more likely my worries came to be. She might really bring us back. The thought made me unconsciously look at Kira, who was still flailing around while glaring at her aunt. I swallowed before shifting my attention elsewhere. Though faint, I noticed a subtle change in the distant greenery, and my brow jumped up. Something is coming. I couldn't tell what it was, but I more or less could guess. They're most likely the Empire forces called by Aoife. It was widely known that the Empire had forces concealed in every corner of its territories. The same was true for the Evanis household. I knew this because Aldrich seemed well aware of where they were stationed, with him keeping a close watch over them. Given the type of person that he was, there'd be no way he wouldn't take them into account. While I didn't know when Aoife had called for them, had I been in her position, I would have called them the moment I noticed that something was off with Kira. So this is most likely what happened. I felt a little relief thinking about this, but this was only a guess in the end. Shit. Similarly sensing the change, Rose grew increasingly alarmed. She quickly scanned her surroundings before fixing her gaze in a specific direction. Her brows jumped up as though she had found something, and she hastily moved in that direction. Meanwhile, I kept my eyes on the distant bushes and noticed several silhouettes emerging. I immediately found the situation to be strange, especially since their figures were hard to make out. It was as if a veil obscured their features, making them seem like shadows that flickered and danced across the forest as they rapidly approached our direction. Fuck. As if fully aware of what was happening, Rose suddenly flicked her head in their direction and raised her hand. The temperature around us surged as a faint red magic circle materialized over her palm. The activation was swift. Before I could even blink, the circle had fully formed, unleashing a fierce explosion of flames that consumed the distant surroundings. Bang! I stared in wide-eyed shock as flames erupted, engulfing the surroundings and forcing the silhouettes to an abrupt halt. As the flames died down, the features gradually came into view, and I felt my expression shift at the sight of them. Wait, what? As I took in their scorched cloaks and faces, a sudden pulsing sensation radiated from my forearm, and at that moment, I realized my earlier assumption had been wrong. They weren't the secret forces from the Empire. No, far from it. They belonged to none other than the inverted sky. What the fuck are you doing here? Rose also seemed stunned by their appearance. Her expression shifted rapidly, first shock, then confusion, and finally, anger. I didn't call for any reinforcements. I have everything under control. No, you don't. A cold yet even voice suddenly cut through Rose's. Emerging from the sea of flames was a tall figure with long brown hair cascading down her back. Her soft green eyes glowed amidst the blaze as she cast aside her robe, briefly glancing in my direction. It was just a simple gaze, and yet, it felt like it had pierced my soul directly. Another spirit user. I didn't have the fondest memories with spirit users. The reason why we're here is because you don't have anything under your control. But, what does that? The woman cast a cold stare at Rose before shifting her gaze to her three companions. One was a burly man with a bald head and a thick mustache. Another was a short girl with vibrant red twintails, while the last was a lanky man with sunken cheekbones and long black hair. We received a call from the princess. Quote. Exclamation mark quote. Wait, what? I fell into a brief daze upon hearing her words. Did she just say, we received a call from the princess? How could I forget? A sudden realization struck me shortly after. These were indeed the secret forces of the royal family. It was just that, the inverted sky was no regular organization. They, in fact, had control over the entire royal family. For their secret forces to be direct members of the inverted sky, it shouldn't have come as a surprise at all. I found myself looking at Kira, who looked stupefied by the current situation. But if there was one person that was the most surprised, it was Rose. The princess. She called for you. But what? How? Quote. We don't know, but it looks like you didn't do a good job at hiding your tracks. Ah, shit. Rose covered her forehead while frowning. She then started mumbling to herself, how is it possible? My disguise should have been perfect. No, that's not true. Her head suddenly snapped in my direction. It was almost as if she had a sudden enlightenment, but I shook my head. Not me. Her disguise was indeed great, but it was ineffective against me for one specific reason. The bone from the melancholy of pursuit. It turned out that the skill I had acquired from it also functioned passively, a pleasant surprise and the very reason I was able to see through her disguise. What next? Seeing that they were all on the same side, Rose appeared a little bit calmer. Should we pretend to fight and all of that before I get away, or? No. The woman in the lead shook her head, staring coldly at Rose and then Kira. The two of you will die. All of a sudden, the atmosphere turned cold. As Rose's face changed, Kira also experienced a change in expression as her eyes shook. Wait, what are you talking about? Why would you kill me? Do you have any idea how much I've sacrificed for this organization? Why would you? All you've achieved is repeated failures. Rose was once again coldly interrupted by the woman. While it's true that you've accomplished a great deal, you've also had over a decade to find the astral mirror. Where is it? I don't know. I've tried looking for it, but it's gone. I could have sworn that. Is it that you don't know, or you're just not telling us? What? The tension in the air thickened as the two figures stepped forward, their presence amplifying the suffocating atmosphere. With just a glance, I could tell, they were stronger than me. At the very least, tier 6 and above. Most likely 7. I wanted to curse at the sudden development. As things stood, there was no way Rose could beat the four of them. Let alone Kira, who was on the ground, staring at the scene with a pale face. You think I'm not telling you the truth on purpose? Why would I do that? If I really did know, I'd say it. Is that so? The woman raised her brow, her expression questioning. I could see a shift in Rose's expression as the woman suddenly extended her finger and pointed in Kira's direction. What happened next unfolded so quickly that I could barely keep up. Bang! Before I could react, a loud bang echoed through the air as a figure flickered before Kira, sending a rush of wind that made my hair whip back. Drip, drip. A faint dripping sound followed, echoing through the tense air. Rose came into view, clutching what seemed to be her own hand, blood trickling down from her fingers. She stood before Kira as the woman from before lowered her hand. As expected, our guesses weren't wrong. Guess? What guess? Rose said through her bloodshot eyes. Indifferently gazing at Rose, the woman adjusted her black uniform, adorned with golden padding and medals. Then, retrieving a golden insignia from her pocket, she carefully affixed it just beside her shoulder. That insignia, I recognized it in an instant. It was the Megrail insignia. You were lying to us. You never truly searched for the mirror. Instead, you stalled for time, giving your niece the chance to grow stronger. Strong enough to oppose us. Strong enough to survive. Smiling, the woman turned her gaze to Kira, whose pale face bore a dazed expression as she stared at her aunt in shock. The entire series of events had probably shaken her to the core. This was especially after overhearing the woman's next words. Well, at least you were smart enough to know what would happen to her once she stopped being useful to us. 566. The entire series of events that were currently unfolding were completely out of my expectations. Was it because I had completely overlooked just how influential the inverted sky was? No, that's not the case at all. I was aware of their influence. There were times when I did overlook it, but that was mainly because they tended to never exert or use their influence within the Megrail household. But it looks like I was wrong. Not only did they show up as reinforcements, from the princess, but they were also here to get rid of both Kira and her aunt. Given by how they hadn't mentioned me, it was safe to say that they were aware of who I was. It was just that. Things will get extremely messy if Kira dies. I looked towards one of my active quests. Filled Diamond main quest activated. Prevent the calamities from awakening or dying. It was my longest active quest and the first quest that I had received. As far as I cared, Rose could die, but Kira couldn't. Absolutely not. But how? How am I supposed to stop this? My head started to spin with all sorts of thoughts, and unknowingly, I found my head turning to stare in Kira's direction. Her expression was lost, almost dazed. At that moment, I wanted nothing more than to stand up and knock her out. Only that way would I be able to talk my way into sparing her. The fact that I was part of the inverted sky wasn't something I wanted her to know. It was just that, I can't move at all, and even if I can, it'll be complicated. Kira knew too much. The fact that there were spies working in the Megrel family was something that she wasn't supposed to know. The reason why they had to kill her was obvious. Ah, shit, I pressed my lips tightly and tried to think of a way to get out of this situation. As things stood, even if I were capable of moving, I wouldn't have been able to beat them at all. They were stronger than I was. The only way for me to do something to them was through a motive. Magic, but would they even allow me to get close enough to them without giving anything away to Kira? This entire scenario, it's messed up. This situation is fucked. Rose's gaze locked onto the figures before her. Her fingers twitching as glowing magic circles formed in her mind. Her domain simmered beneath the surface, ready to explode at a moment's notice. She was outmatched at this moment. There was no denying the reality of her situation. This became especially clear to her the moment she recognized the figures standing before her. Single quote. They're the Crimson Squad of the High Seat of Power. Within the inverted sky, there existed 7 main seats. The strength of each high seat varied, with the general strength at around 8 or higher. To be a high seat, strength wasn't the only important thing. Each seat had its own forces, with each having its own system. The Crimson Squad was one of the most renowned units within the inverted sky. Its reputation stemmed not only from its affiliation with the High Seat of Power but because the forces belonging to the High Seat of Power were said to be the strongest within the inverted sky. Far stronger than Dawn's forces, but that was merely due to the fact that Dawn wasn't one to care about forces. He alone could flatten all forces. To make matters even worse, the woman standing before Rose was said to have been one of the previous candidates for the low seat of power, losing it to the current leader, who went on to become the current high seat. Her title was the Lost Tyrant, Candace Rallam. How do you wish for us to proceed? In honor of the seat you serve, we can end this swiftly. Surely, you understand, resistance is futile. The only thing it will accomplish is ensuring your death is far more agonizing. Though the Crimson Squad captain's words were soft, an unmistakable coldness laced her tone, causing the air around them to grow colder. Rose felt her skin prickle as the wounds she had previously sustained started to sting. I'll give you 10 seconds to consider your answer carefully. If you remain silent, I'll take it as a choice for the second option. As if, Rose clenched her teeth, her eyes secretly scanning her surroundings. Somewhere nearby, a device was hidden, her key to escape. She had arranged for it to be placed in advance, a safeguard in case things went south. And now that they had, she realized with a sinking feeling that it was nowhere in sight. Where is it? Without it, she'd have no hope of getting out. No, she didn't even care about herself. Even if she didn't get away, at the very least. Quote. Exclamation mark quote. It was then that Rose's gaze fell on Julian, and a thought struck her. Wait, maybe, quote, exclamation mark quote. But before the thought could fully take shape, a blur flashed before her eyes, and the hairs on the back of her neck rose in alarm. See crap. A powerful blow struck her arms just as she managed to cross them in defense, sending her hurtling backward, crashing through several trees. Bang, ook. Rose stumbled onto all four as her world started to spin. What in the world? Don't even think about it. A soft voice whispered in her ear as she lifted her head, only to find a figure kneeling before her, cold eyes staring down at her. I was originally planning on giving you 10 seconds, but it looks like I was being too soft on you. We can't have you hurt him. That'll create too much of a headache for all of us. Dawn isn't someone that anyone wishes to offend. A hand suddenly stretched toward Rose. In the blink of an eye, it expanded, growing larger as it reached for her head. At the same time, Rose noticed the Crimson Squad leader's eyes shift abruptly, slack and nearly transparent. Alarm bells rang in Rose's mind as ferocious. Flames erupted from her body. Though she wasn't fully aware of what she was trying to do, all she knew was that she needed to act quickly. Swoosh! Without an ounce of hesitation, she brought her head towards the approaching clam. Although she understood that if the palm touched her, it would have disastrous consequences, she also understood that the Crimson Squad leader would need to sacrifice her hand in order to do so. It was just a matter of determining how far she was willing to go to her. Would she be crazy enough to sacrifice her hand, or, quote. As expected, she wasn't. The moment Rose brought her head forward, the Crimson Squad leader frowned. She could see through what Rose was planning and swiftly stopped herself. Rose took the opportunity to press against the ground and swiftly retreat from the spot. Ha! Her breathing was heavy, and her hair was slightly disheveled, but otherwise, she was fine. The Crimson Squad leader stood a few feet away, first staring at her own hand before shifting her gaze back to Rose. Ha! Rose laughed, her chest slowly starting to grow even. The situation was dire, yet amidst the danger, Rose felt a spark of excitement. How long has it been since I've last fought with someone so strong? She licked her lips and prepared to go on the offensive when. Suddenly, not far from the Crimson Squad leader, a familiar figure leaned against one of the three, gazing at her with a familiar half-smile. Rose felt her entire mind grow numb. What? That? How is it possible for her to be here? She's dead. It's impossible. Her entire mind screamed at the sight that greeted her, and it was also that small distraction that created the perfect opening for Crimson Squad leader to exploit as her figure faded, arriving before Rose in the span of half a second. Quote. Exclamation mark quote. By the time Rose grasped what had happened, it was too late. A force struck her stomach, lifting her off the ground and hurling her back onto several trees. Yuck! The force of the impact left her at a complete loss for breath, knocking the wind out of her. By the time she understood what had happened, she was on all fours, her arms trembling as she struggled to push herself up. Pathetic! A voice suddenly whispered in her mind. It was an all too familiar voice, bringing Rose to a daze once more. As she slowly lifted her head, a familiar figure came into view, gazing down at her with that usual soft-eyed look. Is this really the best you can do? Aish tilde and here I thought you could protect Ki. I was wrong. I was very wrong. No, swoosh. A hand phased through her sister's body, hurtling toward her quickly. Rose's pupils quickly dilated as she rolled to the side. Ook! She quickly tensed her stomach and kicked the ground, propelling herself in the air as she twisted her body and created some distance. Ha! When she looked back, the Crimson Squad leader stood not far away, gazing at her with a calm, unwavering stare. She was taking this calmly. Way too calmly, as though she was confused about something. You look distracted, the Crimson Squad leader said, her head cocking to the side. Quote. Is something wrong? The question was asked more to satisfy her curiosity than for the general well-being of Rose. From the very start to finish, she had made it very obvious that she was going to make the experience a painful one. With no external forces threatening to make an appearance, she felt like she had all the time in the world to do whatever she wanted to do. Rose understood this well, and yet, the sister that I raised shouldn't be this weak. Rose couldn't focus at all. Right behind the Crimson Squad leader was a figure who continued to haunt her even in her sleep, refusing ever to leave her alone. That half-hearted smile of hers. Well, if you don't want to suffer, you can always take the easy way out. Bringing her hands towards her neck, she smiled at Rose. Single quote. It's not hard. I've done it. You can too. Why do you keep haunting me? 567. I'm haunting you. Is that how you see things to be? Say, I'm sad you think of me like that. She sounded hurt, but her expression said otherwise. It had always been like this with her. No one could really tell what she was thinking. That's why I hate her so much. Get out of my head. Clenching a fistful of dirt, Rose pushed herself to her feet. The entire time, the Crimson Squad leader remained still, staring at Rose with an odd expression as she quietly looked around. Get out of my head. Is there someone here? Rose's current behavior was throwing her off. Did she simply lose her mind, or was there more to her words than she let on? Well, it's not too difficult to know. The Crimson Squad leader closed her eyes for a brief moment before opening them again, revealing a pair of fully transparent ones. Almost instantly, the scenery around them shifted, dissolving into a hollow, translucent one that only displayed the faint outlines of everything that used to be around them. Noticing the abrupt shift, Rose's pupils shrank. Bang! She kicked off the ground, trying to put distance between herself and the Crimson Squad leader, but she was a moment too late. The world around her twisted, and she found herself on the verge of getting swallowed up by the domain. With no other options, Rose's eyes turned a deep, glowing red, her face paling as a domain writhed forth from her body. It surged outward, colliding head-on with the Crimson Squad leader's domain. Boom! A surge of pressurized wind exploded from the clash of their domains, ripping through the air and shattering everything in its path. The ground was overturned, and several trees were uprooted. Their simple clash caused the scenery around them to change completely as Rose was forced several steps back. Yuck! Unfortunately, she was at a disadvantage, having activated her domain just a fraction too late. The delay left her struggling against the momentum of the Crimson Squad leader's domain. Although she allowed herself not to be swept by her domain, she was still forced back with an injury. Shit! Rose's chest heaved unevenly as she shot a glare toward her sister, who stood just behind the Crimson Squad leader. Leaning casually against one of the few remaining trees, her sister watched with an intrigued expression, eyes locked onto her. Single quote. Should you really be focused on this fight? She suddenly pointed behind herself. Why don't you look at Key? It looks like they're taking action now. Are you going to let her die? It was then that Rose's gaze shifted past the Crimson Squad leader, finally noticing the three other members of the Crimson Squad springing into action, their eyes locked firmly on Kira. Ah, shit! Rose quickly bolted in Kira's direction, her figure fading from sight. Unfortunately for her, her actions were extremely easy to read as the Crimson Squad leader's eyes flashed, her hand reaching in the direction where she predicted Rose to appear. Just as Rose was about to surge past the Crimson Squad leader, her foot suddenly grounded itself, stopping her momentum. In an instant, she twisted her body, turning to face the Crimson Squad leader head-on. Quote. Exclamation mark quote. This unexpected action threw the Crimson Squad leader off guard, but she was quick to react and whipped her hand in the direction of Rose. Her movements were swift and precise, yet, just as her hand was about to reach its target, Rose smirked. A faint light flickered around her, and a small barrier materialized, preventing the squad leader's hand from reaching her head. This was a skill she usually kept hidden, one granted by a bone she had absorbed, only revealing it in moments of absolute necessity to catch her opponents off guard. Without hesitation, Rose struck back, thrusting her palm towards the Crimson Squad leader's exposed abdomen. Bang! The attack struck, and the squad leader was thrust back several steps. That was all Rose needed as she immediately dashed in Kira's direction. Her expression tightened as she spotted the remaining members closing in. Without hesitation, her speed surged, pushing herself past her limits. I can't be fucking asked. The time that had elapsed since Rose was attacked by the reinforcements and sent back was probably less than a minute. And yet, that minute felt like the longest minute of my life. She sure is taking her time. She usually takes care of matters fast. Quote. Bah, you know how the captain is. She likes to test herself against strong opponents. That's also why she failed to become the low seat. She's too addicted to battle. Yes, that's true. While overlooking the fight from a spot not far from me, I could hear the conversation coming from the other members of the squad. Failed to become a low seat. Addicted to battle, captain. From tidbits of their conversation, I was able to understand a few things. Still, at this moment, I was utterly helpless. I couldn't move, couldn't fight back, my entire body remained paralyzed. All I could do was lie there, powerless. My life wasn't in any danger, but I still felt useless. This sensation, it's frustrating. To make matters worse, looking into the distance, I could see that Rose was slowly starting to lose the battle. It wasn't that she was weaker, but something about her felt off. Almost as if her head wasn't in the right place. The fight should be almost over. How about we start with our job? Quote. Oh, right, who wants to do it? Eavesdropping on their conversation, my heart nearly leapt out of my chest. I quickly turned my head toward them, only to find their gazes fixed intently on Kira. Shit, I clenched my teeth and tried to move, but my body refused to budge. I'll do it. The burly one in the group stepped forward, moving in our direction. His massive frame cast a looming shadow over me as he came to a halt before Kira, who looked up at him, her face pale. Quote. Quote. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. It was also then that she turned her head in my direction. In that moment, I saw it, the trembling in her eyes. She looked scared. I could only stare back at her, my eyes locked towards the quest window in front of me. Filled Diamond main quest activated. Prevent the calamities from awakening or dying. I found myself biting my lips hard. There was a way for me to stop all of this. All I needed to do was order them, and they would probably listen. Even if they didn't, I had other means to make them stop. But that would practically give away the fact that I was from the inverted sky. Could I afford to do it? Single quote. It's not a matter of whether I can afford or can't afford to. I have no choice but to do it. Failing the quest wasn't an option. I had a feeling that everything that I was doing was closely related to this very first quest. If I somehow failed it, I can't. I just can't. I clenched my teeth and raised my head back up, staring straight at the burly man who looked at Kira. My heart pounded against my throat as I parted my lips to speak, but just as the words were about to escape, something flashed before my vision. Bang! The towering, burly man vanished from my sight in an instant. Only to reappear in the distance, his massive frame crashing through several trees with a thunderous impact. In his place stood a tired figure, her hair disheveled, her crimson eyes locked onto Kira with an intense yet worried expression. Casting a quick look in my direction, too, she hastily bent down and pressed her finger against my neck and Kira's. In that instant, it was as if a switch had been flipped, all my senses came rushing back, and I realized I could move again. Was this some sort of bone skill? Use that skill of yours and get her out of here. Quote. Quote. Skill? What skill? I fell into a slight state of confusion. Fuck off. But before I could even process the meaning of her words, a powerful blow struck my ribs, and the force sent me hurtling away. Swoosh. A scorching wave of heat washed over me moments later as flames erupted around the area, consuming everything in their path. Thump. Landing onto the ground, I pressed my hand against my ribs. Ook. That fucking hurt. Looking around me, I saw Kira not far from me, her eyes locked in the direction of where her aunt used to be. The flames swallowed everything around me, their intensity making it nearly impossible to see through the blazing inferno. What is going on? Kira's voice cut through the crackling flames, barely reaching me through the roaring inferno. With a pale face, she slowly turned her head to face me. Quote. My entire life, I believed my aunt was responsible for everything, and yet. I know. What do you mean you know? You don't. Now is not the time. I pressed my finger over my mouth, activating Lament of Lies and blending our figures with the surrounding fire. At the same time, I looked around to see several dots in the distance. With the aid of the skill I had acquired from the Melanchoni bone, I could now see through the flames and tell where everyone was. While I probably can't do much to them, it'll be hard for them to catch me now. Coupled with Lament of Lies, getting out of this place was easy. But I can't leave. How could I let them go, knowing that I had helped Kira escape? It would be hard to explain everything to Atlas, and even if he did understand, the same couldn't be said for those in the inverted sky. The situation could become extremely troublesome. That's why, Kira, I need your help. Kira blinked her eyes, her expression visibly confused. She seemed to have somewhat recovered from before, and I once again looked through the flames. Quote. As things stand, we can't escape them. We won't be able to make it far away. That's a lie. If I wanted to, we could escape easily. But I don't want to escape. Your aunt is alone right now, trying her best to delay them, but she won't last long enough to truly be of any help to us. This wasn't a lie. That's why we have to help her. Help? What? Did you see how Cutting her off, I grabbed her shoulders and looked her straight in the eyes. We have no other option. We have to help your aunt kill them. Only through their death would everything be resolved. 568. What? You want to kill them? Are you nuts? Are you crazy? Kira's reaction wasn't unexpected. It was the natural response of anyone who still had their sanity intact. And this was kind of surprising, considering everything that had recently happened to Kira. Wait, do you understand that they're stronger than us? I do. Oh, you do. Kira sighed in relief, patting me on the shoulder with a smile. But that smile of hers only lasted a few seconds before it faded, and she gripped my shoulder. It didn't really hurt. Bastard, this isn't a dick measuring contest. What does that? I'm saying that you shouldn't lose your mind. Just because they ignored you the entire time. Oh, even if we did go there, what would we even be able to do? Tickle their balls. I didn't really know how to take Kira's words upon listening to them. Outside of the fact that they were very vulgar, they made no sense. However, at the very least, it showed that she had recovered somewhat. That was good. Let's say we get close to them. Wouldn't we be more of a burden to her? This isn't really a matter we have a choice in. I suddenly cut Kira off. Gazing into the distance, where several dots flickered among the flames, I pressed my lips tightly. Burden or not, your aunt can't kill them. The best she can hope for is escape, and even that seems unlikely. No matter what happens to her, there's no outrunning them. They're faster and stronger than us. Then, we have to kill them. I pulled Kira's hand off my shoulder and parted my lips to speak. But as I met her gaze, the words caught in my throat. Quote. You know what, never mind. Just stay here, I'll take care of things. Wait, what? Kira tried to pull me back, but I managed to avoid her hand without any problems. I had intended to work with her at the start, but upon thinking about it, I realized it wasn't needed. I could handle this alone. This wasn't the first time I had gone through something like this. Yeah, she'll just be a burden anyway. This was the cold truth. Kira was strong, but at the same time, not really. She was strong for her age, but that was it. The most she'd be able to do at this moment was help shield me from the fire, which was unnecessary. I could do that alone. Quote. Why did I even think of working with her? I took one last glance at Kira, who was saying things like, "What do you mean you'll take care of things? Where are you going? Are you crazy?" I secretly shook my head at the sight and turned around. Wait, are you serious? You're out of your mind. Get back here. I was just about to leave when I stopped and looked back. Seeing Kira's expression, I paused for a moment as I recalled something. Did you decide to stay back? Here, a blue diary appeared in my hand. What does that? It's a diary I found in your place. It belongs to your mother. Quote. Kira's mouth came to an abrupt halt as she looked at me. I forced a smile. Just in case something does happen to me, I'll give it to you. That way, you'll get to see it. I think it's worth giving it a read. Well, for whatever it's worth. I had only given it a short glimpse, so I wasn't aware of the contents within the diary, but I knew they'd be worth something to Kira. At the very least, it would keep her distracted enough not to disturb me. Seeing her so engrossed in the diary's cover, I knew I had made the right choice. Handing her the book, I turned away and stepped straight into the flames. They were warm. Crackle. Kira watched Julian's back fade into the flames. He was just standing before her a few moments prior when his back suddenly faded from her view. He was crazy, trying to fight Tier 7s and Tier 8s. It was a suicide mission, and Kira knew it. Perhaps he could fight them using his emotive magic, but Kira wasn't the same as him. She couldn't bridge the massive gap that stood between her and the high ranks. She would only be a burden. She was painfully aware of how much of a burden she was. That's why she stayed away. To not be further baggage. Quote. Kira remained frozen in place, staring at the blue diary in her hand. The flames crackled around her, their glow flickering across her face as she stood alone with the diary. From the moment her fingers brushed against the diary, she couldn't bring herself to look away. The cover was made of luxurious blue leather, with a golden string trailing out from the gaps of the worn pages. She was unfamiliar with the book, and yet, she also felt familiar with it. This is my mother's. Her hand trembled. For some reason, she felt scared. Scared of what she'd see inside it. Kira wasn't naive. After everything that had unfolded, she realized that the past she had grown up learning about was not the truth. That her perfect and warm mother wasn't as perfect as she thought her to be. And that scared her. It really scared her. Crackle. Amidst the crackling flames, Kira stood motionless, her mind drifting into a strange daze. It was at that moment that a certain conversation from her past resurfaced in her thoughts. Strength doesn't come from pretending that pain doesn't exist. Pain does exist, and ignoring it just means ignoring all of your problems. The more something hurts, the bigger the problem. It was a very cringy conversation. One that Kira tried hard to forget. But at the same time, it was hard to forget. Because she knew he was right. Strength comes from when you realize that pain does exist and that you can't ignore it. Fuck. Kira clenched her teeth. Life doesn't pause for us. I know. It moves forward, relentlessly. You don't have to tell me that. Quote. Just as we should. And I'm trying. It's about honoring what was while making room for what could be. I know. That's how someone grows. Crackle. Quote. Quote. Amidst the silence, Kira stood, surrounded by the crackling of the fire, before finally reaching for the diary and opening the first page. There's nothing better than spring. It's sweet and tender, but also painful, because it reminds me of the freedom that I can never have. My daughter, I hate her, That moment, Kira started to burn. Ook. Rose felt her body lift off the ground, thrown several meters back. As she skidded to a halt, she raised her head to see a shadow move before her, causing her entire body to tense. She grew especially apprehensive at the sight of the enormous hammer that pierced through the air and whistled in her direction. Fuck! A small shield materialized in front of her as she crossed her arms, bracing herself. Bang! She felt a devastating blow shatter her shield, sending her hurtling backward and crashing into several trees. As the flames roared around her, another figure materialized behind her. Before Rose could react, blood sprayed into the air as several large ice spikes impaled her, striking multiple points on her body. Exclamation mark. The attack came so suddenly and unexpectedly that she didn't have a moment to react before it struck. Thump! Rose instantly dropped to one knee, her body faltering as the flames around her began to die down. It was just as she raised her head in an attempt to retaliate that she realized something. She was surrounded on all sides. Stop your pointless struggle. You might have been able to cause trouble if you were fighting us one by one, but you're not. The one speaking was none other than the Crimson Squad leader. She no longer appeared as calm and relaxed as before. It wasn't because she felt threatened by Rose but because of something else entirely. Do you not feel the presence of the little girl at all? I don't. Indeed, it was regarding Kira. Rose had indeed made the right choice by entrusting her to him. Though she knew Julian was part of the same organization, she also sensed that he was more like Dawn, indifferent to all the internal affairs. She could tell that, for whatever reason, he didn't want Kira to be killed. She saw it from his expression before anything happened. That was what prompted her to free him as well. For now, it appeared to have been the right decision, especially since they couldn't detect the two at all. Like this, I can feel like I've completed my job. Rose silently gazed in the direction of the Crimson Squad before her eyes settled on a distant figure, casually leaning against one of the trees, watching her. She half smiled at her before speaking. Are you satisfied with this outcome? I am. But you're going to die. So what? Dying sucks, you know. I'm talking from experience. Then why did you die? You're not going to answer. Why did I even think you would? Rose mockingly smiled. Her action was enough to arouse the attention of the Crimson Squad, in particular the leader, as she looked back. From the start, she had felt Rose being distracted. This wasn't the first time that she had seen her look elsewhere during the fight. She had checked multiple times for any other presence but felt nothing at all. Yet, as she stared at the mocking smile on Rose's face, the Crimson Squad leader began to feel a creeping sense of paranoia. It was for that reason that she decided to end things there and then. Raising her hand, she prepared to slash down at her neck, killing her with one blow. It was just as she was about to do that when, plaque, a purplish-green hue appeared, and she halted her hand. Watching the greenish hand emerge from the ground, she gazed at it nonchalantly before it shattered into pieces. It was also then that the space behind them wobbled, and a figure emerged. Turning around, the Crimson Squad leader's brow rose. It's you. It's me, Julian answered, his tone and voice sounding extremely detached. Turning his attention towards Rose, he spoke. I'll need you to spare her. There's something that I need from her. Chapter 569. Why do you keep haunting me? 4. Crackle tilde. Massive flames raged, silently spreading and consuming more trees, growing larger with each passing second. A thick cloud of smoke billowed into the air. What is going on? There's a fire. The Milne family was instantly on high alert at the sight of the flames. Emerging from the estate was none other than the Viscount, his gaze fixed on the distant flames, his face marked with a frown. Is that where they've run off? The Viscount was fully armored and equipped. In the wake of the events at the household, the entire Milne family force had been mobilized to track down Rose. Despite the calmness that the Viscount exhibited, he was inwardly extremely worried. Is Kira all right? I hope she's okay. If anything happens to her then. The only reason why he was still keeping himself in check was because he had been warned in advance by the princess, informing him of how she had called the Megrail forces in advance in order to follow Rose. The flames in the distance were most likely from the conflict between the two. Given their skill level, there was no need for the Viscount to worry. And yet, he still couldn't help but worry. Viscount. Snapping the Viscount out of his thoughts was a soft voice. Upon turning his head, he saw several figures standing not far from him. They all appeared to be wearing their own equipment. Ah, princess. Standing at the helm was none other than the princess, who looked towards the distant flames with an even expression. She softly smiled at the Viscount. Please do not worry, I've been told that they've already arrived and are currently holding the assailant back. If we hurry now, we should be able to reach them soon. I'm relieved to hear that. Although he said that, the Viscount's face remained tense. Seeing this, Aoife bitterly smiled. She could see that her words weren't getting to the Viscount. Then, again, she really couldn't blame him. From what she observed, he really seemed to care for Kira. And yet, the two didn't seem to get along with each other. No, it's more like Kira doesn't get along with him. Whatever the situation was, Aoife didn't want to pry any further. Right now, there were more pressing matters at hand. At the very least, she felt at ease knowing that her family forces had already managed to stop Kira's crazy aunt. Aoife was just about to contact them again when a hand suddenly pressed her shoulder. When she turned her head, she saw a pair of gray eyes staring at her. Leon. Aoife felt her heart sink at the sight of his face. It was grave. We need to hurry up. Leon said, his voice extremely low. Wah, my skin. Leon suddenly pulled his sleeve, displaying his skin. It was there that Aoife saw it. Exclamation mark quote. The hair on his arm. They were all standing. Something about the situation is off. Quote. The silence around me was eerily unsettling. With so many eyes on me, I struggled to swallow. Nonetheless, I knew that I had to maintain my composure. I had no choice but to. I'm sure you can spare her for me, can't you? As I spoke, I turned my gaze toward the woman I assumed to be the squad leader. Her eyes were fixed on mine, and I could feel my skin prickling under her intense stare. How unsettling. Something about her felt incredibly uncomfortable. It was difficult to explain, but every time I tried to look at her, her silhouette seemed to blur, making it hard to focus. It was as if my eyes instinctively turned away from her. Was this some sort of skill? You want us to leave her alone? Her tone was cold enough to give me the chills. I nonetheless remained calm and quietly nodded. That's what I said. Oh, I see. The squad leader suddenly smiled, nodding as if she understood my request and was willing to go through with it. My heart sank then. The more willing someone appeared, the less likely they truly agreed. At least, that rule always seemed to hold true for this bullshit organization. That was when time suddenly seemed to slow down for me as the squad leader suddenly raised her hand. My entire body tensed, and my mind processed everything, and yet I found myself unable to move at all. She was simply too fast. PFTT. Her hand slashed. Blood suddenly sprayed in the air, and an arm flew in the air. It wasn't mine. Exclamation mark quote. Thump. A faint, muffled thump echoed through the air. I didn't need to look back to know what it was, and when I focused my eyes again, I saw the squad leader staring at her finger, now stained with red. She directed her gaze towards me shortly after. I don't understand what gave you the idea that I'd listen to you. Her voice was cold, as if what she had just done was nothing more than a trivial act to her. I'll make one thing clear to you now. I don't serve Dawn. I serve a different seat. The only thing I'm supposed to do is not kill you. Anything other than that is meaningless to me. Whether you wish for me to do anything that is not something you can do. Know your place. A sudden wave of suffocation flooded my mind as I struggled to maintain eye contact with her. Something about the pressure she was giving was extremely intimidating. Ah, shit, I nervously swallowed my saliva. Things had turned out to be a lot harder than I had originally anticipated. Even so, there were still several things that I managed to observe throughout everything that happened. She should be talented in both the body and spirit paths. From her previous speeds and attacks when attacking rose to the weird changes in her eyes. These were the reasons why I hadn't bothered to sneak up on her and ambush her. Because I knew it'd be meaningless. This was especially so to someone who specialized in spirit magic. For those specialized in the spirit field, tracking someone through their mana was unnecessary. They could sense a soul's presence directly. It was for this reason that Lament of Lies was somewhat meaningless. Of course, if I had a certain owl with me, then the situation would be different, but unfortunately, Almighty was nowhere in sight. I would have most likely been the one to have lost an arm had I tried to sneak up on her. Of this, I was sure. Drip, drip. A faint dripping sound filled the air as I swallowed quietly. I wasn't sure if it came from my own sweat or the blood trickling from Rose's arm. Perhaps it was a mix of both, further adding to the unsettling atmosphere around. Nonetheless, given the current circumstances, it didn't matter to whom it belonged. Right now, I needed Rose's help in order to get rid of them. This was why I had suddenly stepped up. Otherwise, I would have most likely not done a thing and just run away. However, as things stood, in order to get rid of potential future problems, I had to find a way to get rid of them right now. "You're still standing there." Was my message not clear? Pulling me away from my thoughts was the squad leader's cold voice, and I suddenly felt my body freeze. As though the surroundings had suddenly turned into ice, I found myself unable to move at all. What in the? Panic set in as my mind spiraled with a flood of unnecessary thoughts. Desperately, I tried to pull myself out of the situation, but the more I struggled, the deeper I sank into the cold that surrounded me from all sides. It tugged at me from all sides, dragging me further into the icy quagmire. However, amidst my struggle, a part of me remained lucid. It was also that part of me that realized that despite being cold, I wasn't trembling. No, I quickly snapped out of it. Blinking my eyes, I locked eyes with the squad leader. It was then that I noticed her eyes. They were hollow. As expected, it was some sort of mind illusion. I broke out into a cold sweat. What a terrifying attack. I thought about freeing myself from the sudden attack but then decided against it. As things stood, the only way for me to turn the situation around was through touch. If I just managed to touch her and use my emotive magic, then… just as my mind churned with all sorts of plans, I noticed a subtle shift in the distance. It was subtle, but I managed to spot it. .. Quote. At that moment, a pair of crimson eyes emerged from behind one of the bushes, locking onto me with an unwavering gaze. My heart almost leapt out of my chest at the sight of them as I recognized the pair of crimson eyes. Kira. No, is that Kira? At first, I thought it was her, but as I stared into those eyes, something about them felt off. They felt dead. What is? No, wait. My eyes widened in horror when I saw Kira suddenly move out of the bush she was hiding in. Rustle tilde. A rustling sound suddenly echoed in the air, and everyone's attention shifted towards Kira, who walked out with the same lost look as before. Oh, no. Seeing her like this, a thought suddenly struck me, and my expression crumbled. Was it the diary? What about the diary caused her to suddenly change like this? I almost regretted giving her the diary without looking through it more carefully. I thought it would be a way to keep her distracted while I took care of things, and yet, oh, why is everyone showing up all of a sudden? Do you guys just love making my job easier? With a sudden smile, the squad leader extended her hand. No, wait, I tried to stop her, but it was useless as her figure faded, appearing right before Kira. Just as she arrived, the squad leader looked at me. Let me guess, you want me to spare her as well? No, like I said, know your place. The squad leader's voice turned cold once more as she raised her hand. Quote. It was then that it happened. Just as the squad leader was about to strike, Kira's lifeless eyes fixed on me. She extended her hand slightly, and suddenly, my hand was engulfed in darkness. The next thing I knew, I felt my hand press against something. When I looked up, I saw it. My hand. It was touching the back of the squad leader. It was just that. It was only my hand that was there. I was still where I was before. I had no idea what was happening, and I found myself quietly mumbling. Sadness. 570. Drip. Wow, you've lost an arm, and you're not screaming. Drip. I'm impressed. I didn't think you'd have that type of willpower in you. The sister that always used to cry has finally grown up. Drip. Drip. Rose's mind was clouded, her vision blurred as she struggled to see ahead. Her right side was numb, and she could barely focus, let alone think clearly. The only thing that continued to persist was the annoying voice of her sister. It just continued. You'd cry for hours for the stupidest things, he. You still do, but not as much. And it didn't stop. Still, at the rate things are going, I don't know how long you'll last. I'm worried we'll be seeing each other soon. Well, I don't mind. Rose knew this was all a fabrication in her mind, and yet she couldn't make it stop at all. Even in death, her sister's image and memories refused to stop haunting her. Make it stop. Now, why would you want to stop hearing my voice? That's sad to hear, and it also makes me want to speak more. How could she hate and miss a voice so much? Rose's lips trembled. However, the trembling didn't persist for very long. It was all of a sudden that she noticed a sudden shift in the surrounding atmosphere, and when she raised her head, she found a familiar figure appearing. Rustle Tilda. Coming from one of the distant bushes, Rose saw Kira appear. Her heart stirred, and her face blanked. And no, why would? After everything she had done. Why was she here? No, she should have seen this coming. Julian's presence was clear of that. Without him, how could Kira run? Ah, pain finally seeped into Rose's mind as her chest rose and fell in unsteady breaths. She wanted to stand, to move forward, to stop whatever was unfolding, but the moment she tried, she froze. That was because her eyes. She finally took notice of Kira's eyes. Her entire body froze at the sight of Kira's eyes. They were a spitting image of my eyes. Her sister's phantom materialized beside Kira, gazing at her with that familiar, half-hearted smile. Yes, they look exactly how my eyes used to look. Don't you think so? There was amusement in her voice as she said those words, and Rose's entire body trembled. And no, she reached forward with her hand, trying to find a way to stop Kira, but it was too late. The Crimson Squad leader had already appeared before Kira. Rose's entire body grew tense as she prepared to move, but it was just as she was about to do so that she suddenly realized something was off. Unconsciously, her eyes drifted to the right, focusing on Julian. .. Her eyes widened as she saw him move, his pitch-black hand lunging forward, piercing through the space behind the Crimson Squad leader, who had no time to react. The next sequences of actions happened extremely fast. Hike. The instant Julian's hand touched the Crimson Squad leader's back, a piercing scream tore through the forest. It was deafening, echoing through every inch of the surroundings. Everyone froze at the sight, everyone besides Rose, as she dashed forward. Swoosh. Flames engulfed her body as she surged forward in a blur. Stop. Stop her. By the time she moved, the Crimson Squad members reacted, but it was already too late. Rose had already appeared before the Crimson Squad leader, her hand thrust forward as a terrifying magic circle materialized, engulfing the leader completely. The Crimson Squad leader didn't even have time to react before getting engulfed completely, the flames from Rose's attack shredding everything behind her. Thump. Rose fell to her knees shortly after, her chest rising and falling repeatedly as her face paled. She was exhausted beyond belief. Still, even though she was exhausted, looking ahead of her and seeing a charred body limply fall before her, she knew that she had done it. She had somehow managed to kill the Crimson Squad leader. The entire exchange didn't last any more than a second, and yet, she managed to come out on top. Against someone so strong, and this was thanks to none other than her own niece and Julian. Move, I need to move. Rose quickly snapped out of her daze. She understood clearly that things were far from over. The Crimson Squad members remained, but before Rose could turn to face them, Kira stepped forward. Her hands were completely black as she raised a finger toward Julian, who suddenly felt his own hands darken. As if understanding what was happening, Julian merely pressed his hand down, and a hand materialized behind one of the approaching Crimson Squad members. Careful, one of the members noticed the anomaly, reacting quickly and distancing himself from the spot where the space fluctuated. But as if anticipating this move, just as the burly man from the Crimson Squad stepped back, a hand materialized in the spot where they moved. Shit, by the time they realized that they had fallen for a trap, it was too late. Ah, another scream pierced through the crackling of the flames around them. Rose scanned her surroundings, her gaze eventually locking onto Kira, who now appeared like an entirely different person. Her eyes were cold, and her entire body was growing darker and darker by the second. The sight, it reminded her of a distant memory. Oh, doesn't she remind you so much of me? No, stop, I used to be like that too, no. I don't want to hear about it. Back when I had fully embraced the darkness. Nobody could stop me then. Looks like she's turning out to be more and more like me. Rose's chest trembled at the sight. Indeed, Kira had begun to resemble her mother more and more. From the hollow depth in her eyes to her effortless command over the darkness. It was as if she were becoming a reflection of the woman Rose used to respect the most. And that scared her. That woman, she couldn't let Kira stray in that path. Another scream suddenly echoed through the air. Frantically, Rose turned toward the source of the cry and saw another squad member clutching their head in agony. Rose could see the despair and shock on their faces as they held onto their head. Now, only one member remained. Stop, what are you doing? Get away, Uke. Two hands suddenly materialized from the space around her, pressing onto both sides of her face. A scream similar to the previous ones echoed throughout, piercing through the loud crackling of the flames. The scene was shocking. Rose could hardly believe her eyes. For the Crimson Squad, one of the elite forces belonging to the seat of power, to be eliminated like this, who would believe it? Had she not seen it with her own eyes, Rose wouldn't have believed it. Julian's emotive magic aside, Kira's transformation was nothing short of staggering. The fact that she could control the darkness so precisely, able to carry a body part through it without anyone noticing, was truly shocking. No, that's not entirely it. Upon further reflection, Rose realized that the reason none of the Crimson Squad members had noticed Kira's dark magic stemmed from several factors. For one, their attention was always entirely on her, while they dismissed Kira as the least threatening, overlooking her presence entirely. When the situation shifted, instead of redirecting their focus to Kira, they fixated on Julian, believing him to be the source of all the chaos. This, in fact, was their biggest mistake. Had they paid more attention to Kira, then it doesn't matter. It's already too late. Most importantly, Rose could foresee just how powerful Kira could become in the future when she utilized this skill properly. As long as no one was aware of her presence, she could swiftly shift the tide of any situation. That, alongside Julian's emotive magic, and the two could probably defeat people a lot stronger than them. Quote. Still, staring at Kira, Rose didn't find it in her to feel happy at all. In fact, all she felt was fear and apprehension. The more she looked at her, the clearer the reflection of her mother became, causing a lump to form in her throat. Rose was about to speak when Kira suddenly moved, directing her attention towards the Crimson Squad members who were still alive. With her cold and hollow gaze, she stopped before them. She stood quietly, staring at them in silence as Julian silently looked at her. Just as he was about to open his mouth, Kira suddenly brought her hand forward. Swoosh! Flames suddenly erupted from her hand, consuming the Crimson Squad members entirely, incinerating them on the spot. Her actions left both Julian and Rose stunned. Kira, by the time the flames died, there remained nothing of the Crimson Squad members. Just their charred remains. The same was true for the Crimson Squad leader whom Rose eliminated. The only thing that was left behind besides their ashes was the crackling sound of the surrounding flames. Kira's clothes fluttered as she stood in silence, not saying a single word. It was then that Rose finally managed to mutter a few words. Her entire body was in pain, and her vision was blurry, but she still had enough force to call out for her. Quote. But her words seemed to go on deaf ears. Kira just remained motionless, unmoved by everything. The more she looked like that, the greater the pain Rose experienced. She was turning more and more like her mother. What happened to you? In spite of her struggles, Rose forced herself to speak. You used to be scared of the darkness. And your eyes, It wasn't just the pain causing Rose to stumble over her words. Quote. You look more and more like your mother. She herself was struggling to articulate her words. Don't let the darkness consume you. The fear of witnessing the past repeat itself left Rose breathless. With each word she spoke, she felt her energy draining further away. Quote. Don't repeat what your mother did. Don't. You can stop. Kira's voice suddenly echoed, cutting Rose's voice. As her silver hair gently fluttered before, Kira turned her head. Quote. Aunt, I understand everything. Something about her voice left Rose unsettled. No, you do. I understand that you were also a victim in all of this. I'm sorry for how I treated you in the past. You were never the bad guy. Rose felt completely breathless. Looking into Kira's eyes, it suddenly felt so suffocating. Because, quote. I now understand who the bad guy is. A tear suddenly traced down Kira's cheek as she retrieved a small diary. It was me. I was the bad guy from the start.